Before we get going, I should probably explain, why are there two different percentage thingies on the sides here? Well, I couldn't decide whether I wanted to set the 3080 as the baseline or the 4080 as the baseline and measure the average percentage result. Keep in mind is, you've got the GPU. Beautiful game graphically. I don't think this intro scene really does it justice. This game is extremely impressive. But here we can see that, like, once we actually get camera control, only the 4090 is delivering over 60 FPS at native 4K, with the 4080 averaging throughout that cutscene a little over 60, and the 3090 and 3080 well below 60 FPS, both currently and in the averages, really fully stretching its leg as it reaches CPU limits. Again, look at the GPU usage percentage on the 4090 right now. And guys, this is a Ryzen 7 7700X on 30. The thing about that is I think 4080 prices are more likely to come down. NVIDIA will allow that easier once the 3000 series has sold out more. Anyway, what I was really hoping to do with this video is help you guys out. If you're looking at the 3080 versus the 3090, please don't spend much more money on a 3090 unless you're doing something professionally that actually needs 24 gigabytes of VRAM, in which case it might make sense. And heavily consider the used market right now on these, although please research used GPUs and buy somewhere where you have some sort of buyer protection, all of that kind of stuff. Yeah, 4080s, I think the prices need to come down because, again, look at it compared to the 4090, right? If you think about the 4080 versus the 4090, there's a much larger performance gap there than there was between the 3080 and the 3090.
So here we have my breakfast, my little coaf, and then...
I have so much energy in the morning, so I feel like I just want to do as much as I can, and the day starts like this, like I'm really excitable and like just so much hope for what's to come. And then here's me having a classic moment where I'm like, wait. It's a pretty nice.
To keep this trim, I have a protein shake. I'm just kidding. I mean, I do have a protein shake, but it's not to have at. And then I'll jump in the shower and have a proper lunch. So I know this seems really extra that I use like serums on my face. It's a new thing for me. I just find it really like therapeutic. It does just make you feel really like together. This again, so for like a day look, I like to mix my sunscreen with a little bit of colour, just so it gives a bit of coverage.
Smoke my still.
I learnt to ride, and I miss it. So I am just passing the city of Melbourne now. I'm passed under it. Couple. It's yours now. So I sold my bike, made it to IKEA. I haven't eaten since my ride. So 2 hot dogs and some bun nibbies. Now, the rail situation, they're out of stock. But I am so clever. So clever. That was pretty much some things that made me feel good, like and this goes patch around online. Thanks for joining me today. It made me feel not so alone. Catch up.
Mike Bond here with Jake Shields, who's obviously been a part of the news over the past few days after his incident with Mike Jackson at the UFC PI. Jake, I did have Mike. I spoke with him a few days after this, and I know you saw the interview and had some thoughts on it and some things you wanted to say. So I'll just give you kind of the floor if you want to explain what happened between you two, what led to that, and anything that you feel he said that was incorrect that you want to rectify on your end.
Yeah, I think most of it was incorrect. First, I just want to say, thanks for getting back to me. I saw the interview, and initially I was extremely critical of you. I DM'd you and said, like, why would you allow some guy to just repeatedly call me a Nazi and white supremacist and whatnot without questioning what that even means? These words are such serious words, and, you let it go. But I got your point. You just wanted to let him talk, made himself look bad, because it's just so beyond ridiculous to call someone a Nazi repeatedly without explaining what you mean. And yeah, there's a lot of lies in the stories. But first off, I'd never heard of Mike. We originally got into it because on Twitter, he started calling me a Nazi for no reason. I had no idea who he was. But I would just block someone if they call me a Nazi. But I saw he was in the fight industry. I'm extremely respected in the fight industry. Everyone in the fight industry, for the most part, loves me. No one's ever called me a racist, or would they? So for this guy in my industry thinking right with that, I told him, I go, when I see you, Mike, there's going to be consequences. You know I'm going to see you. And he just laughed at me, like, you ain't going to do nothing with your white tears, blah, blah. So I'm just like, okay, kid. And then, I saw him at the PI. And I go, I got in the cage. And I'm like, you said you would fight me when you saw me. That I was too scared of you because of my white fragility. So let's go. And he just kept making excuses, saying, no, we're going to fight in Houston. My trainer already said we'd fight Houston. I already called his trainer. His trainer said he was scared of me. His trainer apologized. His trainer said he was an embarrassment with his racism. Pretty bad when a trainer saying that. But that's just where he's gone. He said Mike's over the last couple of years that Mike got into this black nationalism, hating white people. He said he wasn't like that until recently, and he apologized. But yeah, anyways, he got in the cage, trying to get him to come in, and he wouldn't come in. And then he called me Nazi, so I'm like, all right. I got out of the cage. I went over, slapped him, picked him up, threw him on the ground, slapped him a few times. I didn't punch him because, you punch men, you slap bitches. He's such a little bitch, so I slapped him a few times. He's trying to gouge my eye, little bitch. He's like begging, saying, please, someone help me. Please, someone get me off me. So, my friends, I wish they would let me slap him for 30, 40 more times, but they pulled me off. That was kind of it.
Okay, so yeah, one of the things he had said is, I guess, like you pulled him down from behind, and he's trying to frame it as like an assault and things like that. I guess what's like your response to that? Was I know you had said in another interview that he had thrown a punch on you. Like, what exactly happened with all that?
Yeah, he absolutely did not tackle me behind. I came out of the cage after him. I think he threw a punch on me, or he wouldn't push me. He came towards me when I was coming towards him, and I just went right grab him. It's kind of a blur when these fights happen so fast. I kind of went grab him and I just chopped him. He was so weak, he felt like a little girl. Just grabbed him, threw him on the ground. And that was when he started begging for help. That's when I stepped him out and started slapping him. I was very careful not to punch him. I figured, I'm just gonna more humiliate him. He's not worthy of me hitting him. He's so pathetic. He's lucky if he in time of life where I'm mellowed out and don't want to hurt him. Wait, he's end up getting hurt. This guy's grown up. He's clearly grown up in a really rich, soft environment. He's never really been around in the any street life. He's trying to play that game. He's gonna get hurt. He doesn't realize people that aren't gonna take it lightly being called a racist and a Nazi. Especially the weird part is I looked him up. He's 3/4 white, 1/4 black. He grew up playing like lacrosse. Like you try and act like he's a good thing. Like you grew up rich, white, sheltered. Now you're trying to play the street life. People that are gonna hurt you. If there wasn't consequences, I would hurt jail. I would go and put the guy in the hospital, maybe worse. He doesn't understand there's like consequences for this stuff. He's gonna run into people. If he's not careful, they're gonna kill him. But that's what he talked himself into.
And he had said that you've been banned from the UFCPI. Can you give clarity on what's going on there? Was it just like for the day? Have they told him permanently not to come back? What's the situation?
I haven't talked to him from the PI. I would be really surprised if it's a permanent ban, considering, I just slapped him. He's the one that was calling me a Nazi. Nazi is an extremely serious thing to call someone. What if you call my friend Dooley the N-word? Dooley would go up on the ground and slap him around, and everyone would be praising him as they should. I mean, especially everyone's praising me too. 100% of the fighters are praising me, including every black fighter. That should tell him something. But if I'm a Nazi, why is every single fighter praising me, not him? Shouldn't they all be taken? Shouldn't all the other black and Jewish fighters be on his side for him trying to stand up Nazis? It's so insane how unself-aware he is. And also, everyone there was with me was not white. Shouldn't that tell him something? The fact that, they're on his side. Oh, another thing he said that really upset me, my friend Dewey Cooper, who happens to be black. Like, I'm friends with Dewey, but he's saying Dewey should have sided with him because he's 1/4 black over me, his actual friend. That's disgusting. He didn't use the word race traitor. He basically called Dewey a race traitor for not helping him. Dewey didn't know him. Dewey even goes, I didn't know the guy was black. Like, he doesn't look black. He's not. You don't walk around. He goes on holler racism. It's not like people walk around when they see a black guy, they see a guy who looks like maybe Mexican or Middle Eastern. It's just, I think every black guy is going to jump and help. It's not how it works. People are brothers over other things besides race. Most of us in MMA don't believe in this racist ideology. We're brothers on the mat. We train together. We don't think about like, oh, this guy's black, this guy's Middle Eastern, this guy's Mexican. Like, remember this, he's all Mexican. I never thought about that. That's when I crossed my mind, like, oh, there's my brothers. And this guy is so obsessed with race. It's really strange. To be honest, I don't know if he knows any black people. I've never seen a black person.
And that is one point, I can absolutely vouch for. You go walk into any major MMA gym in the country, it's a melting pot of all sorts of cultures and races and things like that. That is one of the things about our sport that brings people together in a lot of ways, for sure. I guess one of the other things you said that he intends to press charges. Has there been any actual movement on that front? Is that a real thing, or as far as you know, there's nothing on the legal side that's actually in motion?
I haven't been notified, but I think he's a lawyer. He'll probably press charges. I think it's something he'll probably do. He's a little bitch. But I just don't think he's got a case, man. People can see his talking. They can see him calling me a Nazi. They can see the racism he's saying. I didn't hurt him. I was just laughing at him. He was trying to gouge my eyes out. He was calling me a Nazi and white nationalist for months. That's defamation. Luckily people know me. They know I'm not a Nazi. They know I'm not these things. He could have badly hurt my career. He did hurt Pat Milicich's career. He got Pat Milicich fired from places. So he already ruined Pat Milicich's career and put him broke. He's trying to do the same thing for me, but it didn't work. So I have a very strong defamation case. I've already talked to an attorney. I don't plan on suing first, but if he does, I'm going to hit him with a huge lawsuit. And what's he going to sue for? Getting slapped in the face. He didn't even get hurt. It's just such a baby pathetic move. He I don't care if someone has black pride or black power or paint glasses and has a huge brown pride tattoo on his chest. But Kane's a great guy. He treats everyone with respect. He doesn't go around bashing white people because he has a brown pride. He's just proud of his skin color, and I'm fine with that. But this guy is a clear racist, which is strange. So it's weird because he didn't grow up that way. So I don't know. Apparently, it's what happened in the last couple of years. Maybe the colleges he went to pushing this weird woke ideology of white people are bad. The fact that he has a small amount of black in him, maybe the college professors treated him better, pushed him to be a racist. But I really hope he needs mental health he needs, because if not, he's gonna end up hurt.
Last thing I want to ask you, I just want to give you a platform. I mean, you touched on a lot of it there. A lot of strong words said, a lot of big accusations. But you know how the stuff kind of festers on social media, things get pushed here and there,
Yeah.
out of context. So, is there anything that you just want to clarify about, you know, where you stand, what you believe in, and whether it's what like accuse you of or just in general?
You know, I think anyone that knows me know I don't have to explain those things. I have a great rep in the business. I've been accused of being racist a million times on social media, but never once by a person that's known me or met me or been around me. Everyone knows I have good values. Everyone knows no matter what word I say I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna do it. That's why I told Mike that was on site. Like, if I say I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna do it. And I'm a man of my word. I believe anything you say you're gonna do. Everyone that's worked with me, everyone that's been around me knows I'm a man of honor. Think about it in a major journalist like me. That's maybe why I thought that you were trying to. When I saw you, I thought maybe you were thinking up for me because the major journalists for the most part have different politics than me. I don't judge people off their politics. I know a lot of MMA journalists seem like they do for some reason. But no, everyone that's been around me knows I'm a good person. I'm honorable. Do what I say I'm going to do and treat everyone exactly equal. If you deserve to get smacked, you get smacked regardless of racial.
You know, I will say on my behalf, I do mirror some of those comments that you said, and the fact that, you know, I want to give, as the journalist, want to try to be down the middle here. I want to give him an opportunity to say his piece, a new opportunity. I don't think it is my position to inject my personal opinion or, you know, go down these certain roads based on what's said. So I'm glad that, you know, you had your platform here to speak back, and I appreciate you being willing to get on here and talk about it.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on so quick. Like I said, when I saw him call me Nazi or remember not say anything, I was like, I think you should have interjected. But I also see your perspective of not interjecting. So as long as you're consistent with how you do it, I can respect that, and that's fair.
I appreciate you very much, Jake. Hopefully, you know, things can blow over here and everyone can kind of move on with life. But
Great, thank you.
I hope you have a great day.
Yeah, have a good day. Bye.
All that good stuff and more. Let us say hello to the one and only Mike Goldberg. Hello, Mike. How are you?
I am very good, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing great. Great to see you. You're in the office. It looks like you've got the memorabilia, the mementos, so to speak. December 21st, 1997. Is this a date that is just kind of like engraved in your brain?
Oh, of course. Of course. And not just because of the UFC and it now being 25 years. It's crazy, Ariel. And my niece's birthday is today. She's 21 years old. So we call each other UFC buddy. And I miss you, Dad. My father passed away 5 years to today.
Wow.
And by far, he was my biggest fan. So love Dad. Dad's up in heaven. He was my biggest fan, no question. You, my friend, have always been my biggest and most loyal supporter. I've said that to you many times. I will say it to you again because this seems like the right time to say it. So it is. It's a very special day in a lot of ways, and today's a celebration day for my niece, for Dad, and of course for 25 years since I was in Shin, Yokohama, Japan.
Wow, and thank you for that. I appreciate it. So could you paint the picture for us? Where were you when you got the call? How long? Because I think you were replacing Bruce Beck, who's still a fixture here in the New York area, working for Channel 4 NBC. Like, what were the circumstances surrounding you getting the call to go to Japan to call your first UFC?
Well, the best news is that Bruce is still there. But one of the greatest hirings in my life was NBC hiring Bruce Beck. So he could no longer freelance.
Is that why?
You know?
Is that why? Is it?
Yeah,
Wow.
that's exactly what it was. Because at the time, and as you know, being in the, the metro area, Bruce had a role on MSG that I had at Sports Channel Chicago. We were play-by-play for maybe the smaller college basketball games. We were sidelines for the Knicks or the Bulls in my case. We were somewhat virtually identical, if you will. And then when he was no longer able to freelance, I was at ESPN by then. Bruce Mono, of course, Brucey maybe rest in peace, my dearest friend in the world. Brucey said, and you've heard it before, Goalie, 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 I got a gig for you. It's in Japan. You got to take a jiu-jitsu class. I heard gig, I heard Japan. I have Gracie Baja off the street. I'll go there this afternoon. I promise you, Brucey. But that was it. And I was actually in Vancouver when I got the call. And both of us being hockey guys, you will appreciate this. I was doing some Vancouver Canucks games as a freelancer at the time. And so my flight was from Vancouver right into Narita and right onto the Shinkansen, which seemed really simple as I was flying over to see Bullet Train. And then I came up and there wasn't a lot of English there. Somehow I got on the Bullet Train and I made my way to Shumido, Japan. But it was all about Brucey and our relationship with ESPN. And Brucey believing I could bring some energy and enthusiasm to the Ultimate Fighting Championship.
And how many days or weeks before the event came this call?
I would say 3 weeks, maybe.
Okay.
3 weeks, 2 weeks.
That's not a lot of time.
It wasn't a lot of time, and I'll be the first to admit, and I know people will be like, well, he still doesn't know, but I'll be the first to say that it was a cram session. It was an absolute cram session in every form and fashion. I watched old tapes. I watched like UFC 15, Vitor. I watched Randy beat Vitor because my first title fight was Randy Couture and Maurice Smith. And that was when Randy won the belt in the heavyweight division for the first time. So it was a cramming session, but it was also a ton of quality time when I got to Japan, Ariel, with Elaine McCarthy, who taught me immediately. She was the first person I saw from SEG, go away from Bruce in production. And she said, and I quote, R is H in Portugal, in Portuguese. So it's not Royce Toys. And of course, it's Elio Gracie. She told me about the little man on the bottom in the guard and explained a bit to me. And then I met the Olympic gold medalist, Jeff Blatnick. Now, we lose too many people way too soon.
Yeah.
But Jeff and Big John, we were in a ballroom, and they're talking to me about different things. And John lays on his back, Ariel, and he goes, "Come here, kid." I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. I just met. We're not dating. He's like, what's going on here? And he showed me guard. He showed me half guard. He showed me just enough not to know too much. And of course, I leaned very heavily on Jeff during those many first shows. The same way I always did with Joe. I always understood my role. And Joe's the expert. I was Summerall, Joe's Madden. And that was no different at the time. For Jeff Blatnick, he definitely favored the wrestlers, if you remember back then, for obvious reasons. And then we did the show. And it was crazy. And who knew that my 100th UFC would be Randy and Brock? And that this thing would turn into a global phenomenon, because that's what it became. Because way back when, that production truck was a milk truck and Brucey was on a stick mic, but somehow we made the show happen. And as you know, you go over to Japan and you get the Wimbledon clap.
Yeah.
I'm like, whoa, what's going on here? People are beating each other up. But a day to be cherished. I'm getting chills. And for many, many reasons, my emotions are all over the place today, but obviously so.
By the way, at this point, I mean, you're a veteran, ESPN, Canucks, all that stuff, Chicago. Are you kind of freaking out before? I mean, this is a brand new sport. You're in a foreign country. You haven't called it. Like, were you super, super nervous before the call?
Absolutely, 100%. Because much to your point, I had made it to a really nice level in the mainstream world.
Yeah.
And I mean, I started doing the Detroit Red Wings. You know, I did the Red Wings Stanley Cup season right in the same time frame as I went to Japan. But it was Bruce Connell. And Bruce was someone I trusted. And I knew Bruce wouldn't put me in a situation that was too crazy. And for better or for worse, the distribution wasn't all that spectacular at the
Right,
time.
right.
Senator McCain was right. So it wasn't going to blow through millions of households right away, as I kind of learned and understood that it was renegade at the time, but that these were athletes that were going in there to compete. And so my learning curve was definitely a fast track. And guys like Randy Couture took me under their wing very quickly, accepted me. And I mean, I'm forever thankful to Jeff Blatnick for the way he welcomed me, to the many others I had learned from, and more than anybody, John McCarthy, because John has been there throughout this entire ride. He's been a big brother. He's told me things, Ariel, that I didn't want to hear, but I needed to hear. And I would not have been on the journey that I've been on if it weren't for Big John helping me, this newbie, to try to grow with this sport of mixed martial arts.
It is a reminder of how, you know, the times have changed, because could you imagine someone in 2022, you know, walking into a UFC broadcast for the first time in the social media age? People would roast him if they thought that he was a, you know, a poser.
It might go as well as my NFL game did, right? I can say I had a bad game. I should have stayed off social media, but you are absolutely right.
So
that would be a tough time to do it right now.
Right, absolutely. As far as the event, it's actually a very memorable event because of the Sakuraba controversy, and then having to replay the match and the tournament, middleweight title. What do you remember specifically about UFC 15.5 Ultimate Japan?
Frank Shamrock's MMA debut, his UFC debut. Ken was already well established. He was the world's most dangerous man. And this guy, Frank Shamrock, was finally getting his moment. And his opponent was Olympic gold medalist Kevin Jackson from Michigan State, a good Sparty. I'm an Ohio kid, so I'm okay with Sparties. It's those other guys that I don't talk about that I hope to get a rematch with, but that's another subject. And he armbarred Kevin Jackson in, I want to say 18 or 19 seconds if we look back at it. That is the most memorable moment, because I go in with an Olympic gold medalist in Jeff. You have Kevin Jackson, who is an Olympic gold medalist. I'm told that wrestling can dictate how the fight goes, and boom, here comes Frank Shamrock, who had great credentials at that time, but I only knew what they were worth to a certain degree because I was new. But I'll never forget how quickly that fight was over. And then I learned why that fight was over. Like, wait, what's, you know, afterwards, what's a tap? Well, if he would have held on to it, Goldie, Big John telling me, he would have snapped his arm. I'm like, oh, okay, so it's not no mas Roberto Duran. And they said, absolutely not. It's checkmate. And that's what it was. And it didn't take long for checkmate for Frank Shamrock against the Olympic gold medalist that day. That's the one I remember the most.
When did you get the call that you'd be back for the next one? Like, I'm assuming when they called you for this first one, it was more like, hey, do you want to jump in here? But it wasn't like you signed a multi-year deal with them. When did you find out that you were being asked back?
So one of the best things, going back to my time struggling with Big John and being supervised by Jeff, is Bob and Ellen Meyerowitz, the owner and, of course, Bob's wife, walked by the ballroom that we were messing around in at the time, and he poked his head in. So he saw the new guy on the floor in this ballroom in the Palace Hotel in Shin, Yokohama, Japan, and I'll never forget that vision. I looked at both John and Jeff, and I go, that's not a bad thing. The owner knows that I really want to learn, and I knew it would be good. I knew I would come back. I knew that I would be my guy, and it very much was that moment of them seeing how proactive I was already being to try to be the best I could to broadcast the UFC for SCG at the time.
And it was a run that lasted 2 decades. I see you're rocking the gear. You still have the poster. It doesn't seem as though there's any ill feelings. Are you still able to watch the sport? Are you still able to follow it? How do you feel about the sport, and in particular the UFC?
Blessed and much more appreciative than maybe I was at the time. And I say that because I know you and many others can relate. When you're so darn busy and you're trying to learn and you're traveling and you're the next fight and the next fight and the next fight, you don't really step back. You're amongst those trees and you don't step back and you don't take that view at the forest. And so was I always honored, blessed, and appreciative? Of course I was. But now I cherish it much more. I haven't had this jacket on in a while, but this jacket has always been right in its spot in my closet. I'm very proud of the time that I spent with the UFC, and that took some time for me as a person and as a man to be able to reflect on the positives once the sting of the negatives, and obviously the sale and then the non-renewal of my contract, those go away over time. And you have fans hit you at different times and places, and fighters. Like the podcast I just did with Sugar Sean O'Malley, where he asked me to call a fight, I do, and it pretty much goes viral. And he's loving me, and I never called one of Sean's fights. He came to the UFC after I had departed. I am so appreciative because there's so much in my life that I have experienced, so much in my life that my family has experienced, and so much in my life that I have today because of the Ultimate Fighting Championship. And so it's nothing but respect, it's nothing but well wishes, and it's nothing but thankfulness, especially on a day like today. Did it take some time? Yeah, it took a little bit of time to get that sting away, but I was never unappreciative. I was just hurt. I was hurt. And I was saddened by the fact that I had such a great gig with great people and that I no longer was able to do it.
I understand recently you actually bumped into Dana White in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that?
That was a little while back. It was kind of crazy because I would like to run that one back because the whole did Dana say anything? And I mean, it was an awkward situation. Craig Borsari was wonderful. The hugs, the tears, everything was there. I should have been the guy to be proactive and walk up and thank Dana as I look back at it. I should have done that. I should have said, Dana, thank you. Because business is business. And when I saw Dana about, I want to say probably about a year and a half later, so this was after my departure, we were in Las Vegas. My son had a hockey tournament. I was coaching. We were staying at Red Rock, still using those Petita connections, of course. And I walk out and I see Dana in the valet area with a couple of buddies, and he's getting into his car. He's leaving probably after a dinner or a little bit of gambling, as we know, with the UFC president, Dana White. And my son, Cole, looks at me and goes, Dad, that's Dana. And honestly, Ariel, I froze. I did not know what to do. Do I say hello? Do I nod? What do I do? And I'm usually a guy much like yourself who's got a pretty good instinct. And my son, God bless him, he's like, Dad, go say hi. And I did, and I shook his hand, and I said, thank you for everything. I said, I hope we can stay in touch. And I wish you nothing but the ultimate in success. And all. It was a great moment of, I guess, closure at the time because of the way that the ending went. And, you know, like I said, I should have been the one to thank Dana and not waited and then have a little bit of negative come out of it. Because Dana White was great to me. He was great to me. He was supportive of me. He was the one who called me when I was going to go to the WWE and said, don't go. We want you. We got you. Lorenzo is the man. I mean, I was Lorenzo Fertitta's guy. There's no question. But it was a good moment. And I'm really glad that I walked up to Dana that night or that day in front of the Red Rock. And I'd be kicking myself, Ariel, if I wouldn't have. I'm glad I did because it turned out well. But was there a little fear and trepidation? Absolutely. Actually, the first thing he did say is, what the F are you doing here? But he meant, like, why are you in town?
Sure.
Of course, with Dana, you can take that a lot of different ways, right?
So do you still follow? Do you still watch the organization, the sport? Are you still, keeping up to date with things?
Absolutely. MMA will always be special to me. MMA is what I'm known for. But make that combat sport, and the athletes that continue to take the sport to where it is today, not just on the UFC platform, on every platform, because my 5 years at Bellator was absolutely tremendous. And to have a chance to sit next to Big John and have him be my broadcast partner was truly a full circle. I was one of the guys who was part of the roast at Big John's 50th birthday. I mean, we were always very, very close. Ron McCarthy, obviously, judges all the time, does a tremendous job. I went to Ron's high school football game. always appreciate the athletes and always appreciate those who were part of my family, and always the fans, because the fans remind me at various times that I did okay. I did okay, and they enjoyed what I did, and they appreciate it. And yeah, can I watch every single show now? No, I don't think anybody can. You really watch every single show out there right now. But do I turn it off on purpose? Never, never. It's a great sport. My friends are still part of it, Ariel, and I love the fighters. I love the fighters, and I think about those fighters and what they've said to me over the years, and I watch the next breed. And hey, Sean O'Malley's call to come to his podcast, and then reaction to that video just reminds me that, you know what, a lot of the fighters still appreciate what I've done as well.
I'm so happy to hear that. I would hate to hear that there's, you know, you're a human being. You're allowed to have feelings. You're allowed to have emotions. You're allowed to have pride, ego, all those things. But to live with the resentment after all the great things that you did for this sport, that you were the soundtrack for this sport, some of the greatest moments in the history of the sport. You know, you're the voice that's attached to it. They can't play those moments without you being involved. And you're part of the reason why so many people got into it. And for the longest time, new fans might not remember this, or might be surprised to hear this. There was only one play-by-play guy. There wasn't three or four. Yeah. It was just you at every single event. You and Joe for the longest time. So you're a huge part of the history. I go on, and you don't even have to comment on this. I just feel like the history of the sport needs to be celebrated more. You know, the 30th anniversary is coming up in November. And I would love if they did something like the NBA did last All-Star game, where they brought out the 75 greatest for the 75th anniversary. Why don't we name the 30 greatest in the UFC's history and bring back, let all the grudges go away for one night. Just bring back everyone who's around. Wouldn't that be great to celebrate the people who make the sport what it is today, the organization what it is today? I would love to see that. And I'm sure you would echo those sentiments, and I think it would be a great thing. The good thing is you're still calling fights. You're calling BYB Extreme, right? That's bare knuckle fighting, correct?
Bare knuckle fighting, yep. And then Pro Box TV with Roy Jones Jr. this past year. I mean, you want to talk about the best of the best. I got to work with Superman. And my partner on both BYB and on Pro Box is Paulie Malignaggi. And Paulie reminds me a lot of working with Joe, Ariel. And I think if people know Paulie's personality and they know Joe's personality, you can understand exactly why I say that. And the one thing, you know, there's many traits that they have, the enthusiasm and the look and the energy, but the one thing that is consistent with both of them is they're the best at what they do in their sport. To me, Paulie is the best at what he does in boxing, and Joe will always be the best at what he does in MMA. And to be able to learn this past year and really embrace the sport of boxing, coming into a new form of combat sports, to have Paulie next to me, Ariel, has been tremendous. Just really quickly go back to your point about the 30-year anniversary and the celebration. I was reading your post and I saw that, and I was thinking about it. And you and I had texted last week, and congratulations. And shortly thereafter, you texted me, Goldie, do you want to come on today and talk about this? And I mean, it rattled me in the most positive way that any human being can be, let's just say, embraced. Like, my guy Ariel still loves me. He always had me. He appreciates what I've done. And I think we should appreciate everybody. And I agree with you. Let the grudges go away. Let's just have an open forum of who has helped make today. And let's name the 30 greatest. And hey, maybe they'll have my voice on one or two of those fights.
Yes, more than one or two.
More than one.
Do you have any desire to call MMA? Like, you're very busy. You're doing bare knuckle. You're doing boxing. But is there a part of you that would like to still call MMA? Does that matter to you?
Yeah, it does matter, because if I am able to be placed in the right situation in the sport of MMA, I'll attack it with the same vibrance, energy, enthusiasm, and do my homework like always. You know me and my prep. I mean, I redefine OCD. There's big capitals in a heartbeat, And that's why I enjoyed my time at Bellator so much, because there really was so much crossover. I mean, Douglas Lima, Diego, Chinzo Machida, obviously Lyoto, Bader's over there. obviously Rumble came for the one, and now I'm getting chills thinking about Anthony. But Mitrio, Nelson, it was the same in a lot of ways, other than don't say Joe and don't say Octagon.
Yeah.
You know, Jimmy, that first show, I asked Jimmy Smith, I said, did I call you Joe? He said, nah, a dozen or two times. Don't worry about it. I go, okay. Did I say Octagon? He said, once. All right. Yes, of course I would. And hey, you know, it's a crazy world, and I respect so much what they're doing at the UFC today. But if for some reason, somewhere, somehow I got a call from them again, would I be on the first flight and go back in a heartbeat to be with friends and family that I was with for 19 years? Without a doubt. And if that doesn't happen, I'm just saying, you asked if I would go back, I would go back in a heartbeat. And if that doesn't occur, that's okay too. I understand the business, but man, I'll tell you what, I would be better than I was in those 19 years, being able to step back as I've been able to do in the last 5 or 6 years and take it all in. I would be better. And I think there were areas in which I improved when I went to Bellator, because I had a minute to take a deep breath and say, and look in the mirror and go, I can get mad at everybody else, or I can look in the mirror and be a better man myself. And that's what I've chosen to do. And I'm attacking boxing the same way. And, you know, you and I have talked about it, your success and your crossover and you working in boxing, it makes me smile every time I see you, because I feel like, hey, I'm gonna join my buddy Ariel on this boxing thing real soon.
Yeah.
And so far, so good. And who knows what could open up. Maybe my next journey is as a lead commentator for the Sweet Science in some form or fashion.
I love it. You mentioned Anthony Rumble Johnson, still shocked of his passing, and I remember him calling you out, mentioning you. That took some guts. That took some balls to do that, you know. And so can I just ask, you know, how you're dealing with that, and when you found out about it, did you know that he was that sick?
I knew that he was very sick. I did not know that he was that sick.
Okay.
We were constantly in touch via text. When Desmond Green made his BYB debut, it was in Miami. And a bunch of the guys were in the stands. And I asked Rumble, he's right there. I go, Anthony, AJ, you coming to the show? He's like, Goldie, you know, I'm dealing with some health stuff. And this is 3 years ago, Ariel. But I'll see you soon. And then, hey, how you doing, bud? Good, I'm good. And he never got into the details of what he was dealing with. But I knew it was very, very serious. But I only knew that it was serious to the point of he couldn't fight and compete. I didn't know the fight for life was going to end for Anthony Johnson. And I wish there was something that I could have done, but I'm not a doctor. But I know that I said the things that I wanted to say to him in the time before he left us. And that was really important to me, because you know what, man? That did take a ton of freaking balls for him to do what he did at that UFC, Ariel, and not be scolded by the management there. And I remember I was laying on the couch watching that show, and he goes, and one more thing. And I just froze. And then when it was me, I was like, no way, there's no way he just did that. And that encapsulates everything about fans, fighters, friends like yourself, that will be in my heart, my soul forever. But that moment right there tells me I did it right. And man, when I heard of his passing, I was in shock and disbelief. We did a tribute that I wrote, of course, at the BYB Extreme that I was broadcasting shortly thereafter. And we were getting close to it because we were set to do it before the main event. And I started to get quiet on the air. And Paulie knew it was up, Benny Ricardo knew it was up, and then Fernanda, you know, my better half, Fernanda came over. I texted her, I said, can you come over here? And she put her hand on my shoulder as I read that tribute to AJ. And that tribute and the one I had to do for Bruce were the two toughest things I've ever done on TV, because of how much both of them meant to me. I wouldn't be where I am today if it weren't for Bruce Conner. Not even close at so many levels, Ariel. But doing that tribute to AJ was tough. You just want to get it right. And thankfully I did. And I love that dude, man. He was two people, as you well know. There was Rumble and there was AJ. And I was very blessed to call him my friend and for him to call me this.
You're the man, Mike. Happy anniversary. So great to have you on. So great to connect. So great to see you doing well, at peace, in a good spot, professionally and personally. I wish you the best this holiday season in 2023. Keep on doing your thing, my man. You know, a lot of people still remember you, still love you. You texted me, if you still remember me, and you still, of course, I will never forget you.
You knew I was
I know.
Kidding, not kidding, because I had seen you at Jake.
I know. But of course, I will never forget all the things you've done for me and falling in love with the sport because of your cause. As someone who looked up to broadcasters and tried to emulate broadcasters, you were the UFC guy. You were the only MMA guy for a very long time here in North America. So I hope you know that a lot of people have your back and love you.
You are at the top of that list. You remember us playing trivia with Zach Candido in Mexico City?
Yes, absolutely, yes.
That was fun. What's his nickname? What's this? What's that? I got
Yes.
it. And highs and lows, you've always been there, and I mean this sincerely. You having me on your show today, because I consider you the best at what you do. And your platform has grown because of your hard work and your commitment. And I've told you many times, so this isn't coming out of left field, how proud I am for you, of you, and how happy I am to see your success. And for you to say, Goldie, do you want to come on the show and talk about it today? I'll save that text as well. So thank you for everything that you've done for me and for the sport. And may our journeys become very close together. Let's get on some gigs together moving forward. Only the broadcast gods know for sure. But the more time I get to spend with you, the better, because you are a world-class human being who is loyal to almost to a fault, I suppose, when you look at where you and I have gotten our hands slapped at times. But I love you, brother, and I thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate that very much. All the best. Talk to you soon.
See you, bud.